Hello there, friends. I'm Scott Wakefield, lead pastor at First Christian Church of Greene County, Tennessee, and I am joined today by,
Rick Mearns.
and we are going to have a coffee
Convo.
convo. Coffee convos is an opportunity to have a good cup of coffee, or I think water in this case. Both of us are old enough that too much caffeine at this point of the day is probably not a great idea.
Yeah, I like sleeping at night.
Me too. So I have water. I should have had decaf so that we could do this with integrity and say it's coffee convos. This is Water Convos today. Water Convos today is an opportunity to get to hear about the work of God in your life and get to hear your story and learn about you. So Rick Mearns, tell us who you are and where you're from, a little basic bio, family history, growing up as a kid. How'd you get to Greenville, Tennessee? How'd you get to God's country?
All right. Well, grew up in the Finger Lakes, upstate New York,
Yeah?
out in the boonies. Very similar to here, except for the mountains. Brought up in a Catholic family, every
Okay.
Sunday.
Yep.
Unless you were dead,
You
go
were
to
there.
church.
Yeah.
And when I, moved out, graduated, I kind of stopped going to church. Kind of, did my own thing
Yeah.
for quite a while.
How many kids in your family?
I have a son, Ryan. He is 19.
Yes.
My wife, Karen. I'm not going to tell you how old she is.
Oh, well, I wasn't expecting that. And I was actually wondering about your siblings growing up, but thank you for telling us about Ryan and Karen as well.
I have 3 younger sisters.
Okay.
My parents are both older than me. Yeah.
Oh, helpful detail. Thank you.
So after
So
I
after you graduated, yeah.
graduated, I did a few different jobs, odds and ends. One of my most interesting jobs to start with was where I met my wife.
Oh, yeah?
Over a dead body.
Oh,
Yeah. I worked in a morgue. I assisted with autopsies.
okay.
And,
You were an EMT for a number of years.
Yeah.
Was that during that time?
It was just in the beginning of it.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
where I really learned anatomy.
Okay.
But she was a occupational therapy student, and she
Okay.
had the opportunity to see an autopsy, and I was the one that she came in to see. I wasn't on the table.
Oh, no.
But,
You weren't the subject?
No. But afterwards I thought, she seems pretty nice. I'm going to ask her out because she lives 8 hours away, and if she says no, I will never see her again.
Well, there you go.
But she said yes.
And here we are.
And yeah.
Cool.
34 years ago, 1989 is when we got married.
1989.
Met in 86.
Cool.
But
And that was
So-
in where? Where were you then?
upstate
New York still?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
So I became a paramedic. I did that for almost 30 years. Along with that, I was a medic in the Army.
Okay.
And I did firefighting as kind of like a hobby, as a break from being a paramedic, but it kind of...
So as a break from emergency medical stuff, as a break, you did firefighting.
Yeah.
So you're slightly crazy. Is that what
Kind
you're
of
telling us?
An adrenaline junkie, I guess you could say.
What are some of the, without making us sick, what are some of those kinds of experiences like for those of us who, like, I'm not an EMT type. I'm not a firefighter type. I'm certainly not an adrenaline junkie. I'm more of a theology nerd, a bookish indoorsy type. So how much of that kind of stuff have you experienced and seen that would be surprising or hard?
I'd say probably
What's that like?
35% would be
Really?
the really surprising stuff.
Really?
I mean,
Most of it is,
yeah.
2/3 of it is not.
Yeah, I mean, just
Surprising.
ordinary stuff,
Yeah.
Of course, in the very beginning, I'm like, I'm going to somebody's house because they have a bee sting. I'm like, what? I didn't even know when I was, just a first responder that you could die from a bee sting,
Right.
you know.
Yeah.
Um,
I did some police chaplaincy in Chicago for a little bit. And so I saw a little bit of some things where I thought, oh, my, eesh. That's tough. How do you respond? How do you, because I'm not sure I'd be able to do that well. I mean, I'm sure you get used to it because you've got a job to do.
right.
How do you get into that mode? And I'm not exactly sure what the question is, other than, how do you get used to that, I guess?
Yeah. Well, some of it is the people you're with on the calls.
Okay.
They have a critical stress debriefing a lot of times after really bad calls.
Yes, yes.
And some of it is just morbid, humor,
Huh.
to try to
To
get
lighten
your
it.
mind.
Yeah.
Um,
Were there people in that world as an EMT or in the service where they're doing it, but they can't keep doing it and they have to do something else? Was that common?
Occasionally.
Occasionally?
Um,
Because you did it for 30 years as an EMT.
yeah.
And you were in the Army?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How long in the Army?
I was in the Army for 23 years.
Okay. I thought it was 20 plus.
Most of it was Guard and Reserve
Okay.
time.
Yeah.
And then I had my active duty and was in Iraq and stuff like that.
Yeah. Was it common for people to have to do something else?
Yeah, sometimes it was just a break, even
Oh, sure.
on a day, like I remember a couple of incidents, both in the Army and, as a civilian, where I was on a call and whatever the situation or the person was,
Yeah.
reminded me of family,
Yeah.
and,
Wow.
especially when you're younger and you got somebody and, he just kind of like reminds you of your dad,
Yeah.
and I'm like, someday this is going to be my dad,
Right. Yeah.
So that's kind of difficult sometimes.
Yeah. So, what would you say are some lessons you learned from being an EMT for 30 years and being in the Army for 23 and firefighting?
So the more training that you have, the better you do your job, and the better you do the job, the less stress there seems to be to it.
Because there are patterns that kick into gear
Yes.
when the crisis is there.
Right. That you're training, and sometimes afterwards you're like, I can't believe all that just happened, but it was like
Oh, I bet.
your muscle memory type thing that comes in there and you remember, and it just
kicks
do
in
it.
and you do
Yeah.
it. I know in all those fields, there's obviously there's all the time training. I mean, there's times off, of course.
Right.
But if you're not doing the thing in a crisis situation, or even if it's a bee sting, if you're not doing the work of the thing, or you're not off, basically you're training. Is my understanding. There's so much training that constantly is going on.
There should be anyways.
So how have you learned to implement that kind of thinking in other parts of your life, if any? I'm just curious. This isn't a question. This isn't a question we gave him beforehand, FYI. But I'm just intrigued by the whole, because, I'm a pastor. I'm dealing with people's lives and souls and hearts and minds, but not their bodies. and it's just a whole different world for me. Have those training kinds of things or things you've learned, how have you applied that in other parts of life, if any?
Well, one of the things that I've discovered over time is the more I know, sometimes I have to teach it to get better, I guess you could say. Like if you're just reading a textbook, for
Right.
example,
Yeah,
you might be able to answer the questions,
right.
pass the test, get hundreds, but when you teach it, it brings it into a deeper level. You
Yes.
have to really understand it to
Yes.
teach it. And I've kind of found that in just general
Yeah,
life type things.
yeah. That's good. So, traditional curly or waffle fries?
I like waffle fries,
Good.
but I really like curly fries too.
Really? I'm surprised at how many people say curly.
Part of it has to be the texture. If it's like a moist, I mean, they still have to be somewhat crunchy. You know?
Gotcha. So you like your curly fry? You like your fries crunchy?
Yeah.
Gotcha. All right. Cool. So let's do some
And I
more.
don't put ketchup on it, just pepper.
No ketchup?
No.
I'm not sure we can be friends.
All right.
More get to know you speed round things. Scariest thing you've ever done?
There's so many things that should be really scary, but probably one of the scariest things was part of the firefighting training with confined space.
Mm.
So they put you, like you're in an air pack, all your total fire gear, big gloves,
Yeah.
helmet, and blindfolded, plus your air pack and a mask on. And they put you through these little tight spaces
Yeah.
where you have to like go through there. And there are spaces where you can't go through with your pack on your back. You have to like take it off and slide it ahead of you.
Oh
And you might be sliding it and all of a sudden it drops down or it goes up and you just have to negotiate. And sometimes they'll even like, somebody will be in there, there's always somebody watching, but they'll like tie a rope. So now you have to untie it. You can't take your gloves off. And so
That-
my fear, and in that situation, I know I'm safe because
Yeah, because they're watching
yeah,
and they know what
But-
they're doing.
and the idea is to train you so that if you ever were in a collapse or something, that you have a better chance of getting out.
Yeah, yeah.
But if I don't know I can get out to start with, I don't really want to go in there.
That's one of my things is like that like really confined space things. I had a couple incidents as a kid that I thought I'm not getting out of this, and I was squeezed in, and I thought this was the end. Ever since then, that's been one of my things. That sounds terrifying to me.
Yeah, skydiving, jumping from rappelling from a helicopter, bungee jumping, that stuff was all easy compared to being on the ground just trying to.
I believe it. Yes. Not that I'd want to do any of those. None of them. What's one thing you don't like sharing?
Probably that I don't like sharing
Okay.
things.
That's seems to be kind of a common answer to that question.
Oh yeah.
And it could be like, a thing or an internal idea or feeling too. What's something you hope you never have to do again? And this conversation is not an acceptable response. I knew you were. That's a Rick Mearns response. This conversation?
Well, seeing you've tossed that out, it would be meeting the new campus pastor at South Green.
Seriously. I was wondering how long it was going to take for us to bring up Bob. We'll get to some of that
All right.
soon enough. Tell us something people most likely don't know about you.
Well, until this, probably most people didn't know that I was, an adrenaline junkie.
Yeah.
Did firefighting, paramedic, and, want to get in there and, I have problems if I'm just standing back watching it.
You want to be actively
need to
moving,
be-
involved,
Yeah,
and
I need
engaged.
to be part of it. And
Huh. Yeah. Cool. What's something that has recently made you mad?
mad. I don't know if it's mad as much as sad or upset, but you know, um, you know, going home from church Sunday, you know, coming across a structure fire and
Yeah. Tell us what happened. You've told me. I know the story.
Yeah. Well, I keep thinking that I stayed here later than I normally do on Sunday, but you know,
Probably
talk to
wasn't.
my wife and my son, and I'm always
You're always that late
last one
anyway.
out the door, but
Yes.
we're next to it.
Rick is one of our stick around for the afterglow
Yeah.
of the morning types.
But on the way home, I decided to take a different route, which I don't normally take.
Huh?
And coincidentally, it was because I wanted to see how the new sign
Oh,
showed
yeah.
from in front of my house, because it's kind of like diagonal. And,
Oh, really?
But I'm going up the road, and I see smoke coming up, and I didn't know exactly where it was, but I knew the color of the smoke. This wasn't going to be a good thing.
Oh, really?
And as I
Because
got there,
what color?
it was really dark.
Darker?
Yeah.
Okay.
So as I got up there, house is on fire.
Yeah.
This older lady is coming out. There was somebody that was had stopped and was trying to help. And now I know the family, mainly one of the daughters that graduated with my son.
Okay.
So I helped get her across the driveway, and then she wanted to just stay there, and I'm like, this is where the fire department's going to be coming. We need to get you out of the way.
Ah.
And smoke was still coming out.
Yeah.
And,
So this had just started, and you were right on the scene.
yeah, pretty
Early.
much. I was
Wow.
first, second one.
Yeah. And so you stuck around for the next 4 hours and helped.
Something like that. Helped the fire department. Was
Wow.
dragging hoses,
Yeah.
you know, getting equipment, stuff like that.
Yeah. So is the house a loss? Total loss?
Oh yeah, there's no rebuilding that house.
Wow. How long have they lived there? Do you know?
I believe a long, long, long time.
Really?
Long as I've been here,
Yeah.
at least.
So we have some you-specific questions, some Rick Mearns questions. And the first one starts like this. Dude, I feel like I see you everywhere as a part of everything. It's that getting involved thing. How many places do you serve or have you served here at First Christian?
Well, when I first started here, I first got involved with student
I
ministry.
was going to say, I thought youth might be the first one. Yeah.
Although when I actually moved here completely,
Uh-huh.
Kim Clark is up there. We need volunteers for kids.
Kids.
So my mind is my son is a kid, but he was sixth grade. I wanted to be doing that.
Right.
So when I talked to her, she says, well, you need to talk to Tommy. But she still got me, you know. So I helped out with kids
Yeah.
when there were shortages or somebody was gone.
Yeah. As a fill-in person.
Yeah, then I did guest services. For a while, I was uploading videos for you every Sunday.
Yes, that's right. I'd forgotten that. Yeah.
And I've done Next Steps, part of the
Uh-huh.
care team. But I'm not, I mean, I get all the base camps
The notifications and yeah.
and pray, but I don't go to any meetings or anything like that
Yeah.
for that. Next Steps, I just recently started being with leadership for Regen.
So
campus-
basically almost everything other than music.
I would
So far.
like to do that, but I don't think anybody else would like me to
We
do
wouldn't
that.
we wouldn't want you to. Who are the South Green Boys? That's in quotes. BOYZ.
Who are they?
Yeah, who are they? What are they?
Well, we're launching the South Green campus
Yep.
October 16th.
Yes.
And there's a bunch of us that are really excited about it, getting involved. Some people have done a lot of work already, and we're just excited to be part of it.
So, how did you get hooked up with South Green? Why are you excited about going to South Green and launching there?
Well,
Actually, there's
my
a sense
son
in which
graduated there.
it's your fault that we're going to South Green in a sense.
Well,
Not entirely, of course.
I'm very pleased that that's
Yeah.
happening.
You've been a part of those discussions
as
from
soon as
early
we
on.
talked about
Yeah.
Chucky Doke, I'm like, next one.
Yes. Yes.
But my son graduated from South Green.
Yeah.
I tried to go to as many events there as I can, mainly sports events.
Yeah.
And I've always found somebody to like cheer on, and I just feel connected.
Yeah.
You know.
So you've been going there and supporting it, even post Ryan years, and involved
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. They do a lot of good things there.
Yeah.
I like what I see with the leadership there. Not to mention the principal Lori,
For sure.
but and Coach Hosey, and
Yeah.
those are the two I know the most. But and some of the coaches, they really seem to have good ethic.
Yeah. I think this Friday is Chucky Doke
Chucky
South
Doke,
Green.
yeah.
Woo! Who's going to win that, you think?
I have to say South Green, but
What's the craziest thing you experienced while being a medic? We asked a little version of that earlier, but this is one of the questions people asked specifically.
craziest things.
It's probably
There's
not
just
bee
so
stings.
many of them.
Yeah.
It's not like a gross type thing, but going to pick up somebody that's had a anaphylactic reaction to peanuts at
Oh.
Five Guys,
Oh, really? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and
That would be a place to have had it when they used to have them everywhere.
and that itself isn't the strange thing. The strange thing was going back the second night for the same guy at the same restaurant. And he thought he would be okay the second night.
Really?
Yeah.
Had this been a regular thing for this person?
Yeah, he'd had peanut allergies all his life. Maybe that's an advertisement for Five Guys,
Yeah,
They're so
seriously.
good, I'll suffer through anaphylactic shock.
They are good burgers. This is not a question, and I won't tell you who wrote this because I know who wrote this, but one of their staffers said this. Not a question, but simply let him know how much we love and appreciate how he cares for and pours the love of Jesus into our kids and families. He's going to be missed at Greenville, but South Green will be blessed to have him there. Good
Oh.
stuff. This was not asked by Bob since he was banned from asking questions. But Bob wants to know. In fact, there are like 3 or 4 "this is not Bob" questions here. Why is he your favorite campus pastor? Give us the top 5 reasons. You don't have to answer that. In fact, let's skip that and move on. If you could go to any time period in history, which one would it be? That feels to me like a Tyson question. Any time period in history, which one would it be?
It would definitely be Old Testament.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think something around Exodus. There's so many things with Exodus that
Mhm.
I'm like, what were they thinking? Because I mean they can't write every single word that every person said.
Right.
And just, I mean, especially the times like praying, making these, idols and
Oh, like what were you thinking?
yeah, I mean,
we read
I would
that
like
looking
to,
back, going like, how did they get to that point
yeah, I mean, and that's kind of what I'd like
when
to
it's
see.
so clearly
know.
a not do this kind of thing? Yeah,
And why
I've wondered that
didn't
too.
somebody stop it? I mean,
Yeah. Well, and I wondered that too. It must have been so far gone and accepted among them that that's okay to do because they were actually participating in the worship of other gods and participating in other nations' worship practices.
yeah,
It must have become so much a part of the culture that it was just assumed as okay. In some ways, we have some parallels today, but I've wondered the same thing myself.
why did you go and marry this person that it was very clear that you weren't supposed to marry?
Right. Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Cool. Exodus would have been an interesting time. The Exodus is, by the way, something we probably are studying soon. We're going to do Exodus and what's called the New City Catechism, which is a 3-part study of doctrinal things with a scripture memory verse and some commentary along with them. And so it's a form of teaching. It comes from like what you grew up doing, catechetical stuff. It's sort of like CCD, a Protestant version of it, where we go through a doctrine each week, and it's got a cool app with it, and you can use it for kids and youth. And so it's something we're going to look to do, Exodus and New City Catechism back and forth for probably a long time.
As long as John, or
After John.
no? I mean, will it take as long as John did?
Oh, Exodus will probably take as long as John, yes.
Yeah.
But we're going to go
seems
back
like
and forth between those two
Hmm.
to keep it a little fresh. Yeah. So let's get a bit serious. What's a difficult challenge in life you've had to overcome? How has it made you stronger? What did you learn?
I guess recently it'd just be health things,
Yeah.
Had 2 surgeries this year, and it's like,
And that changes your, obviously, what you can do
some of it does.
and your thinking.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And makes me think, like when I had the first one, it was I had a hernia, or like part of my stomach was up in my chest cavity, and they had to pull it down and
Yeah.
sew things up. And
Sure. Was that
know,
painful, I assume?
if I was awake, it probably would have been.
No, I don't mean that. I mean,
Afterward,
before the actual.
basically, it was not being able to breathe well. I was
Hey.
always short of breath.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That makes sense.
And yeah, I mean, when you got 75%, which is what the doctor said, 75% of my stomach was up in my chest cavity. Like,
Wow.
but had the surgery, things went well.
Yeah.
I mean, almost anytime you have surgery, there's going to be discomfort afterwards.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But things were going well. I was able to breathe. It was great.
Really?
I went to visit my parents in Alabama. I walked like 5 miles. I hadn't done that in probably 5 years.
Wow.
And then that was towards the end of March. And then middle of April, it came back.
Yeah.
And it was much worse than the first time.
Really?
Yeah, the second time I had to have surgery. It wasn't like an emergency surgery, but pretty close to it, because
Yeah.
I could not eat at all.
Wow.
And, because of that, I had to go through it all over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I kind of, the thing that helped me the most with that one was when I was in my most pain,
Uh-huh.
It was Good Friday.
Hmm.
My wife's birthday happened to be the next day, but it was Good Friday. I'm in the hospital,
Yeah.
just so unbearable, and I got thinking, well, it's Good Friday.
Yeah.
You know, what was going on with
Yeah.
Jesus?
Right.
Like,
He felt it.
he felt worse than I did, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
And, you know, people were trying to kill him.
Right.
You know, people are trying to help me.
Right.
Not as quick as I would like to at the time, but, you know. So that really...
But you were identifying with that experience
Yeah.
of Christ's suffering for us.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
And, I mean, it's not like I was being persecuted.
Right.
But all the same, I'm like, that came to my mind.
Cool.
I wasn't able to be here for Good Friday services
Yeah.
or Easter,
Yeah.
you know. And I also kind of wonder if I didn't give him enough credit with coming through the first surgery as well as I did.
Huh.
And, you know, hindsight's always 20/20, you know. I don't think it was like a punishment, but it was
No,
like,
sure.
hey, now you do have a chance to give me some glory.
Second time around. Thank you, Lord. Who have been some significant people, mentors, teachers, leaders for you personally throughout your life? That can be work, it can be school, it can be personal, disciple, spiritual mentors for you. Who have been some of those significant people in your life?
Well, I'd have to start off with my father.
Cool.
You know, I'm not Catholic, obviously, anymore. I think every Sunday going to church
Yeah.
and seeing him serve was a good background, you know,
Yeah.
for me.
Exceedingly rare to see your dad serve in the kingdom at church as a kid growing up.
Yeah.
That's great. That's a big
and
deal.
You know, we've had disagreements, as I'm sure you can imagine, you know, with, you know, the faith side of it. But even now, if I go on vacation on Sunday, I feel like I want to go to church.
Right, right.
I
You
don't
don't
care
take a
where I
vacation
am.
from
Yeah.
your relationship with God
Yeah.
or worship. Yeah.
And, you know, the difference is now, you know, I want to do that.
Yeah.
As a kid, I'm sure I didn't want to.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, we're on vacation, you know.
Yeah.
Let's stay at the beach or go fishing or whatever.
Yeah.
And,
Cool.
so him,
That pattern for you, was that something that during certain times of your life, that pattern that had been established as a kid was helpful for you? I mean, you talk now about you want to, as a bit of a contrast from having been forced to or whatever that
Right.
was, you know, duty-bound kinds of things, which isn't all bad. Were there times when that in your life has helped you? That established pattern?
I'm just wanting to do things, I guess. Not sure I'm getting
Well-
exactly where the question is going, but
Are there times when the pattern having been set of we go to church, we serve, that was established by your parents, by your dad that you just talked about. Are there times where from there until now when you want to and you see the value through having lived all that time, were there times when that pattern carried you through and you did what was the good and right thing to do when maybe you didn't feel like it? Whether it's going to
Well, I
church,
mean,
whether it's doing something at work, whatever. it doesn't-
when I graduated, I stopped going to church.
Okay.
So that certainly didn't follow that pattern, but
Yeah.
and I'm so bad with remembering scripture, but you know, what's the verse about, you know, your parents bring you up and you go back to
When he is old, he will not depart from it. Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Lead a child in the way they should go.
Right.
And when they are old, they won't depart from it. Yeah.
so I did depart from it,
Sure.
but then I came back to it.
When they were old, because you're definitely old.
And, you know, and when I came back to it, I mean, I was like 45. I was
Okay.
deployed to Iraq. I had the opportunity to go to a Bible study at one of the chapels on the little base there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, all right, you know, and, you know, I have no idea why I said I wanted to. Because,
And you hadn't been involved in church from graduating high school till then-ish.
right.
Okay.
Other than what I consider the mandatory, you know, Easter and Christmas going to church type thing.
Gotcha. Yeah.
I mean, Karen and I would occasionally go, but then we just dropped off, you know.
Yeah.
Anyways, I went to Bible study, and that's where I started learning how wrong I was. I mean,
And it became your own ideas and your own faith.
yeah, I mean, and all the talk about being a paramedic and a firefighter, you know, I saved a priest one time that was drowning. I thought I had the ticket to heaven.
Oh,
I mean,
really?
and I'm serious. I really did.
Really?
I did all these good things, saved
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
I thought, you know, it was deeds. I thought my
Yeah, yeah.
deeds were
Sure.
taking me there.
Sure.
Then I went to this Bible study and discovered I was probably going to be a really nice person in hell.
Yeah.
That's
Fascinating.
And
So you had a sense that I'm saving people, I'm doing hero work, those are good things that are going to get me in.
yeah,
Yeah. Huh.
although if I wasn't doing that, I wasn't doing these nice things. You know, I certainly wasn't an angel, you know,
Yeah.
by any means. But yeah, so I don't remember names, but there was a chaplain there that had a lot of questions about. So that would be going back to the question that you actually asked me, you know, influences.
Yeah.
Would be that chaplain.
Cool.
Then coming back, there was, it's called the Berkshire Dream Center.
Okay.
It was a little church that was started by this couple. They went to this, the worst crime-ridden part of the city. And they started off by picking up trash. Every Saturday they did this. Then after a while they started knocking on doors, asking if people wanted prayer. Sometimes they got a door slammed in their face.
Sure.
Sometimes they were invited in.
Yeah.
Sometimes they were invited to learn about their warped sense of worship. I mean, like witchcraft and, you know, other things.
Wow.
And my wife and my son did that. I didn't do that. I was out of my comfort zone, you know.
Yeah.
They started a church service on Sundays.
Okay.
In a tent. Now this is up north in the snow.
Okay.
Tent on one of the street corners. Finally, a landlord let them use an abandoned or a vacant apartment,
Okay.
and they just kept building it. And,
Yeah.
And right now, they took over a church that had gone defunct, and they have all these community outreach stuff.
Cool.
So that couple, and then moving down here after that, probably one of the first ones, I should say you, but it was actually Tommy. Getting with the youth.
Yeah.
I'd come here on Wednesday thinking that I'm going to be helping the youth, but I felt like I was getting more out of it than they were.
Yeah. We've had this conversation a couple times. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, with you, I started taking notes on Sundays, because if I'm not taking notes, I'm not really paying attention as much as I should have.
Yeah. I'm that way. I like to be writing down what the person's saying and my interaction with it. as it's happening, because I have to do that to engage well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you don't normally give me time to write as much as I'd like.
I believe that. Yes.
But it's nice that you got that little thing where I can go back and see what you said or was going to say.
Yes, and sometimes don't, and sometimes say something a little bit different. Yeah. So you look at the manuscript most weeks, or occasionally?
I download it every week.
Okay.
I download the sermon.
Meaning the audio and video, or are you talking about the manuscript?
Not
Sermon guide.
The sermon guide I download every week.
Yeah.
The manuscript I open, or that one I download. The other one I just look at.
Gotcha.
That probably has a lot of people just confused what I just said.
Yeah, unless you're in it. Yeah, that's okay. So, what are some things you've learned from serving that have been helpful for you, and how's that helped you grow?
Being forced out of my comfort zone.
Okay.
Going back to the Dream Center. So I didn't mention it's my wife moved down here with Ryan a year before I did, because I was still trying to sell a house and hopefully transfer my job down here.
Right.
One Sunday, the pastor says, "Can we're going to do a mission thing this afternoon. Raise your hand if you want to go." I'm like, "Well, what is it?" "We're not telling you." It was knocking on doors.
We're not telling you.
But I said I'll do it.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
it was knocking on doors.
And you're like, oh, what have I
Yeah.
got myself into?
But I was like, it was very rewarding.
Yes.
Um,
I've done that so many times where I thought, okay, Lord, here we go. If you can die on the cross, I guess I can go and knock on this next door and talk to this person.
Yeah.
And then I end up having a great experience.
Right.
And getting to know people and talking to them in the neighborhood and inviting them to this thing that we're doing or something like that. Yeah. Yeah.
And then
So you did that.
yeah, and coming here, I remember Kim Clark. She says to me one Sunday, or I don't know, it was a Sunday, whenever it was, she said, "Can you help out with kids if we're short?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Sure." I said, "But please don't put me in the nursery." That's where I was the first
Day
time.
one, huh?
Yeah.
That's funny.
But then the next week she says, "Okay, you can go with toddlers." And after that, I'm like, "Please put me back in the nursery." I can go like
Toddlers-
this.
Yes. Toddlers is work
Yeah.
because they are active and it takes.
And there's a lot of them in there, and
Yes,
they're
there
like
are.
fighting over toys. And
Yes.
but anytime I'm put out of my comfort zone, it makes it easier to do the next thing that, like sitting here. I mean, this is definitely out of my comfort zone.
Is it?
Sitting here doing the talk, knowing that, millions of people can be watching this.
Easily. I mean, for the rest of history,
Yeah.
your story is out there on the internet for posterity. Well, and your answer to the what do you what was it? Something about like
Scary things?
what's
Sitting here
one
with
thing
you?
you don't like sharing
Oh.
or something like that. It was basically like this,
Yeah.
anything like this. Cool. Let's end with our last two, which is what is God currently teaching you, and what are you excited or encouraged about?
He is teaching me, not as quick as, I shouldn't say not as quick as
You'd like?
I'd like, but to give things over to him.
Okay.
I still want to have control.
Oh.
And
And what kinds of ways do you mean?
Well, just like my son, trying to get him to do things that I want.
Gotcha. Right.
Where I need to give it control to him, that he's going to, I don't mean Brian, but
But
God's
the Lord's
going to put the will in his mind let him.
Yeah.
He's going to guide them. It's not going to be me that does it.
Right. That's
then-
hard with older, as an older parent. I mean, yeah, I made the joke about you being older, but I mean, as an older parent of older kids,
Yeah, you're in
that's
that
a whole
situation.
different animal. And it quickly feels like, I have no control of anything with this kid.
And
That's
there's a fine line
difficult.
of trying to just give it all to God
Yes,
and not act like you're apathetic.
right.
You know.
Yeah, there's a balance there.
Yeah, and that balance is what I've had problems with
Yeah.
for a long time.
One way we like to talk about that, it's not new to us or anything, but it's a tension that you have to manage, and that tension doesn't go away. It's there,
Yeah.
and so your involvement, you're pulling back. Your involvement, you're pulling back, and learning what your older kids need
Yeah.
and really need might be different than what they used to.
And realizing my son's a good kid. He's not like I was. He's a good kid, you know. And why am I trying to make him perfect?
Yeah. Yeah.
If anybody's going to make him perfect, let God do that.
Yeah. Good. What are you excited or encouraged about?
I'm really excited and encouraged about South Green.
Yeah.
Some of the things I've already seen, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, youth on Wednesdays. A couple of one of the girls brings, one day I think she had like 9 kids from
Yeah.
South Green.
Suddenly we got a huge South Green contingent on Wednesday
Yeah.
nights. I know.
And we haven't even started.
I know.
You know.
I noticed that it's been a couple months now, but a few weeks ago
Yeah.
at least, and I thought, hey, wait, how cool is that?
Yeah. And it's just cool.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really cool. We've already had a number of outreach things
Yeah.
and service projects that have been going on that you've been involved with staff and faculty. We're putting together a write-up of a few folks who helped do concession stand remodel stuff. It looks really great. They did a great job. So I'm really excited about those kinds of things. And getting
Those
the word
guys
out.
that did the teachers' lounge did a great job too.
Yep. Yes, they did. They did a great job. They did a decent job.
Yeah.
Yes.
And just the feedback you get from staff and stuff.
Oh, they're super appreciative of it.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad that we can help in those kinds of ways.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, thank you for coming on to Coffee Convos and being.
Thanks for taking me out of my comfort zone.
Yes, I was going to say coming public with your life story out of your comfort zone.